I don't know. I did things impulsively as a kid. I had a bit of a job, and it was Depression years, you know. You wasn't going to go anywhere. And I saw a friend of mine, a fellow from the neighborhood, suddenly in uniform one day. I said, "What did you do?" "Oh, I joined the Army." That planted a seed. So I went down and took the physical and everything, and I was 19. I remember I come home and said to my father, I said, "Dad, what would you think if I joined the Army?" He said, "Not much." I said, "Why?" And he was right. He said, "Well, for one thing, you don't like to be told what to do, and in the Army, everybody's going to tell you what to do. And also, you don't stay with things. If you go in the Army, you can't walk away from it." And then I went in the Army. As to say, I was impulsive. I didn't think what that meant, but I left my girlfriend behind. We wrote letters back and forth all through the war years. And when I came back home, I landed in California, and I had a train trip across the states to go home for my first leave. And in New Orleans, the east-west trains don't meet the north-south trains. You have to cross town. I was crossing town on Canal Street in New Orleans. I saw a jewelry store. I walked in and bought an engagement ring. I hadn't seen this girl in 3.5 years. Got home, got engaged. I came here in 1982. Actually bought the house in 83. And at that time, there were 7 Pearl Harbor survivors in Chaseley County that I knew. I'm the only one left. I read a little article recently where last year they had located 8 survivors off the Arizona, and only 4 of them could travel. And this year there'll be less, probably, you know. Well, as you know, it was peacetime, and when they attacked, why, it was a complete surprise, and your mind does want to accept it. It takes a little while to realize it's not a realistic drill or something like that. And then, as a regular Army person, you start reacting the way you know you should to some non-coms and officers get there to tell you to do something different. My post was at Fort Kamehameha, which is an Army base in Pearl Harbor. And we were coast artillery, and our guns defended the entrance to the harbor. The guns were out near the entrance, and then the base was a long, narrow base all along the channel coming in. And most people, even Army people that were there, didn't know where Fort Cam was because it had no gate to the outside world. We were in Pearl. We had to go across Hickam Field to get out to go to town or anything. Hickam Field was the big air base. Oh, Sunday morning I slept in an extra hour, which we were allowed to do, and have breakfast a little later. And across the street from my barracks was a gymnasium, the post gym. And we had a basketball team, and I went over there just to scrimmage with them a little bit. And I was only there a few minutes when we heard this noise that sounded, as I've always described it, as like an airplane was landing on a corrugated tin roof. They were flying so low, and it's right outside. The first thing I saw with my own eyes, when I came out of that gymnasium building, there was black smoke coming up from somewhere. We could just see this black smoke. We thought they had hit the storage tank farm, the fuel depot. We could see and hear explosions. Where we were, there were no bombs at us. They were after equipment. But we got strafed. We had a lot of strafing because, you know, over 150 airplanes at a time puts out a lot of firepower. Since I had some use of the radio in the very beginning, I heard them calling for doctors and nurses, all doctors and nurses, to report to the local hospitals. We knew things like that were going on, and we saw the red ball on the planes. We knew they were Japanese. You know, we didn't give much thought to things. I would say to people, you know, I wasn't even scared. I'd seen so many John Wayne movies, I knew we were going to win. It was that kind of, you know, kid's attitude. But I don't know, we didn't think much about it. I don't think I realized the extent of the damage in the inner harbor. Later on, I could see a lot of these things because I went to the Pacific Fleet Radar School, which was in Pearl. I was in the harbor and lived there for a couple of months. No, which I've mentioned people don't think about, the Army declared martial law, and instantly the courts and everything were taken over by the military, and that was a change of lifestyle for the people. They also forget that in peacetime, officers and upper rank sergeants had their families with them. They all had to be evacuated. And then with martial law, they said, we went into a blackout for the rest of the war, and then also no civilian was allowed on the waterfront, on the beach after dark. The orders were to shoot them on sight, not even challenge them. Well, normally the reaction of us and our commanders was that this was the beginning of an invasion force, and so we prepared for that. I ended up right on the edge of the water with a .30 caliber machine gun for repel landing people, which never happened. I had been a Morse code radio operator for a while. Well, they switched to voice at that time. They didn't need me. So my radio crew and I, 3 of us, were assigned to a machine gun position on a beach. We dug a sand cave, believe it or not. We had found some metal to put a roof over it. And the beach was quite steep. We put 2 cots in there, and we lived in that cave 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 months, waiting for an invasion with a machine gun. It's just a way of life. Well, no mail was going out. For one thing, they had to set up censorship procedures, and they hadn't done that. Plus, we were too busy building up emplacements and things to write letters. And then we got some mail one day come in, and in it was a radiogram from an aunt of mine with a paid answer. Came in through someone like RCA Communications or somebody, radio sort of thing, and had been delivered through the U.S. mail from Honolulu to our post. And I had an answer to be paid. One off where I was all right. Well, technically and legally, I couldn't send an answer back because everything had to be censored going out. And but there was a truck going in for supplies, and I gave the guys this coupon that paid for an answer and said, just tell them I'm all right. And he did that. So that was several weeks. And then later on, the Army actually passed out to everybody a penny, I call it a penny postcard, but a pre-printed postcard that you could sign just to tell them you survived. So a lot of people didn't know for a long time. I loved it here. I wanted to stay in Colorado. And for some reason, we decided, Helen and I, that we'd like a small town in the mountains. We were married 70 years. That did it. We came here, and we've been happy ever since. Helen loved it, too. She often used to say, did you ever think 2 kids from Brooklyn could ever make a life here? Let me just explain. I'm not a poet normally, but after my visit in 2000, on the 70th anniversary, I was over there with this group. And going out to the memorial bothered me a lot more, and I found myself thinking about it in the evening and half asleep at night. And I effectively formulated a poem. It didn't necessarily rhyme at the time, but in my mind, I'd written the poem all in the air, not on paper. And then recently I jotted it down and made it into a more formal poem. And it expresses my thoughts that have been going through my mind for quite a bit. It's entitled, Why You, Not Me? Out of the western sky they came, engines roaring, exhausts aflame. The sky was filled with attacking flights, strafing and bombing with all their might. It was Sunday morning and we were at rest, but when alerted we did our best. And when the attackers did retreat, 3,500 casualties lay at our feet. Now and I, with reverence, attend the December memorials once again. I gaze at the list of the young who died. And with pent emotions, I have cried. The tears I shed upon my cheek pose the question whose answer I seek. Why you and not me?